Welcome, everybody, to 52 Living Ideas. We are looking at Bhagavad Gita. This is the culmination of our journey with Bhagavad Gita. We have gone through all the chapters. Now it's the time to look back at the summary of Bhagavad Gita chapter by chapter. So we are going to go chapter by chapter. Yogeshwar is going to talk about a chapter, and then I invite everybody to give their take on the chapter. Try to be very brief. Just the most important thing you got from the chapter, and try to be concise. Then we'll go to the next chapter, because I want to cover all 18 chapters, hopefully in about 2 meetups, but we have a little bit of wiggle room. But important thing is to make sure that these series of meetups actually bring together in each of our minds as best as we can everything that we have gone through. All right. So let me start with Yogeshwar. Yogeshwar, could you talk about chapter 1, please?
Sure. So just to introduce chapter 1, I'll just recite the first verse. Atha prathamodhyayah dhritarashtra uvacha dharmakshetre kurukshetre samaveta yuyutsavah mamakaha pandavaschaiva kimakurvata sanjaya. Dhritarashtra here is asking that there is a war going on. I am aware of this. And he's asking his charioteer, Sanjay, that what is happening at the war? You've been there, and I know that Vyasa has given you that Divya Drishti, that divine sight, that you can know everything at the war, even while you're here. And you are at the place of the war. So tell me, what has been happening at the war? And what he asks is that all of them are ready to fight. Yutsavaha. They have come together to fight. What he asks first is, what are my sons doing there? And then as a second phase, he asks that what are also the Pandavas doing there? Pandavas meaning the 5 Pandavas. Yudhishthira, Bhima, Arjuna, Nakul, Sahadev. What are they doing there? That is the question from which the whole of Gita comes out. Because Dhritarashtra asked this, Sanjay started elaborating on what is happening at the war from the start. And this happens on the 9th day. This when Sanjay is going to Dhritarashtra and Dhritarashtra is asking all this. This happens on the 9th day when Bhishma has been taken down, like he's on the Banashaya. And Dhritarashtra is now worried, like what will happen to all my sons? Because Bhishma was the, let's say, was the wall that was guarding all his sons. If that wall has been penetrated, then all his sons are in danger. So what Dhritarashtra wants to know is what happened from the first day, all through, that led to this. And we're going to see that Sanjay is going to tell him even about what will happen in the future, what is going to happen. So Sanjay, knowing that Dhritarashtra has a spot for his sons, he is not samatva buddhi. That's something that he doesn't have. So Sanjay realizes this and is now elaborating on what has happened. So he starts from the first day when the war has not yet started, war is about to start, and he lists all the different, the Maharathis, as they say. Maharathi is a person who can fight more than 100 people in army at once. Yeah? So that is the Maharathi. And those are the names that Sanjay is laying out in front of Dhritarashtra, that these are the Maharathis on your side, and these are the Maharathis on the Pandavas' side. Because whenever there is a war, there are two sides of it. Having listed that, he goes on to how the war started. And the war starts on the blowing of the Shankha, the blowing of the crowns. If that has been blown, then we know that the war has started. That was a way, it was a paddhati, it was a way of showing that we are ready for war. Before that has been blown, you cannot directly wage war upon an army because they've not yet announced that we are ready. So that's the announcement that we are ready for war. Then, having listed out, it started with Bhishma. Bhishma blew the first crowns, and all the names. Now, this is important in a way that the names of the crowns were given in the Gita. Elaborate, like this is the name of his Shankha, and he blew it. Each and every, even on the Pandavas side, Krishna and Arjuna, they all blew their crowns. Now, this is important because Arjuna blew the Shankha. He knew what was going to happen. And anyone in great perspective, if we know that war is going to wage out, we, in abstract, we know the consequences of the war. Like we can imagine what would happen at the end of the war, even before the war happens. So even if we've been like preparing for over 3 months for a war to happen, let's just imagine. We know what the consequences are going to be, even within these 3 months. And Arjuna was a great part of that. Let's say decision that was being made. It was not a decision that was already made, but then it was being made. Slowly by slowly, it came to this point whereby war was necessary and it had to happen. When this has happened and they are at war, they're on the ground, Kurukshetra, Arjuna has already blown his crowns, and then he tells Krishna that take me in the middle of the two armies and let me see who is on both sides of the army. Who am I going to fight? And who is going to help me fight them? So Krishna takes Arjuna in the middle and he points out the main, like Bhishma, Drona. They're on the other side. And they have been situated in a way that Arjuna can see both sides of the war. He can see both sides of the army. When he sees, and this is crucially important because it's Arjuna Uvacha, Drishtvaimam Swajanam Krishna. I am seeing these great warriors and they are mine. That is what I'm seeing in them. If I'm seeing that they are mine, how can I wage war against them? Now, this is something that comes to Arjuna at the beginning of the war. because he's considerate. And there is a reason why only Arjuna has such a question. Not Yudhishthira has such a question. He is Dharmaraja. And even a person like Bhima doesn't have this question. And even a person like Duryodhana doesn't have this question. It is a person who is really considerate. Yes, and then we would say that Duryodhana is not that much considerate to have such a question. How can I wage war against those who are mine? And then we would say that, well, Yudhishthira was considerate. Then he should have had that question. What we realize is that Yudhishthira is at most considerate. So he has considered all, and he is knowing that this war has to happen. And we have to go and wage on that war. And then there's also another important fact that he doesn't have a question now. But then at the end of the war, when they're all going to meet Bhishma on the Banasaya, on the bed of arrows, Yudhishthira has this question that I cannot get out of this thought about the war that has already happened. What can I do? Then Bhishma gives him the Updesh of Dharma Shastras, that it actually had to happen. So we can see the contrast whereby Arjuna has the question at the beginning, Yudhishthira has the question at the end. They both have a question, they're considerate. When Arjuna is asking this question, we realize that he is in a state that Siddhanti Mama Ghatrani. And even my bow and even my arrow, they're just dropping out of my hands. What should I do? I cannot see. So this is now where the Gita starts. This is where Arjuna is putting out his heart to Krishna. That how can I wage this war against those who are mine? That's the first question. Then he is laying out his, like, all his logic in a very strategic way. That first of all, they are those on whose laps I have grown up on, Bhishma and Drona. The other fact is that I do not want to win this war, because even though I win this war, I have killed all those who are so near to me, who are so dear to me as well. If I win this war, whom will I be able to get on? I'll be able to get to the Rajasimhasan, to the place of the king. But then what will happen after that? There will be no one to share this kingdom with. And that's an important point. Like, just imagine, we all do, like, we go out to get a job, go out to maybe put up our new company. Just imagine, there's this point whereby you have to choose between your profession and your family. You'll always choose your family. So that's why Arjuna here is saying that I choose my family. I don't choose the war. I know I'm a Kshatriya, but why should I choose war over my family? Then, also another point that is giving, that normally is gotten from the Dharma Shastras, is that what will I do with all this, all the kingdom? Now, the kingdom is a way of showing that it is part of bhoga. It is part of like, if a king has the kingdom, then he has all the pleasures in his life. So I do not want all those pleasures as well. And in that way, Arjuna is putting out his point that should I do it for the pleasure? Then I do not want to do it. Or should I do it that I'm a Kshatriya? Then I have another option to choose my family, which I will. And another thing that I can see all that will happen to all these people that are in front of me. Like just the sheer amount of people who are against me in the war and also for me in the war, what will happen is that they will fight, that's fine. They will die. What will happen if they die? Yeah? All those people are dead. Now, step by step, first of all, that all these people are dead. Then the next step is that what about their wives? And what about their families, their children? What will happen to them? Will they get the best type of education? Will they get the best type of family to live in? Or will there be a kind of contrast in the social environment now? That the people, so many people without fathers, and they have to live in within the society. What will happen to the society when even there is a great amount of women around, and then there are no men around in the society, and there should always be a balance. Arjuna also knows that there should always be a balance between society. What will happen at that point in time? So I do not want to do all this. This is all adharma. I do not want to go into that adharma. And because of that adharma, then what if I go to Naraka? What if I go to the greatest Naraka, meaning that loka, that place that normally is said in the Dharma Shastras when you have done so many bad deeds. And you can see that when you do any bad deed, even small thing, you cannot sleep. In one aspect, you can't sleep. So in one aspect, you've already gone to that place in your subconscious mind that you're not even able to sleep. You're not able to function properly in your life. Arjuna is saying, I do not want to take up that within my life. Why should I? And the other thing is that because of all these reasons, then I am okay if those who are against me, they take off all the weapons that I have, that's fine, and then they kill me. For this reason, I am able to do that. Let that happen. I am also okay for that. Then, having said that, what he did is that he sat back on the chariot and allowed Krishna to say his point. Now, there is one point here. This whole chapter is called Vishada Yoga. One thing to note is that there is always an up and a down within our life. Our life is never going to be the same always. There is an up and there is a down. What the down means is when you'll have a Vishada. So this is Vishada Yoga. Arjuna is having a down at the start of the whole war. This is really important because the time he's having a down, the other is that in front of whom is he having this down? And whom is he telling? Is he telling a person who will just encourage his downfall? Or is he telling a person who is going to tell him the right path on which to go on if he's having a down? Or is he telling a person who will take him through that down because he has to go through it, and then also show him the up of his life and show him the greatness of what he himself can be? This is the importance of that point in time in all our lives, that if we can get the right time when we're in Vishada, and if we can approach the right person at that time, and we can get the right type of knowledge at that time, then how our lives can transform. and how our lives can flower.
Thank you. Thank you, Yogeshwar. So, folks, if you have comments about chapter 1, you're welcome to go ahead and type a exclamation mark. Keep your comments concise. I will say 4 things. This is from Nilesh, who did a meetup on Savitri here. 4 things to note about Gita. That Gita is being spoken at the time of tremendous conflict. This is the largest conflict that Arjuna has ever faced, and that world has ever faced at that time. There is a physical conflict of war. There is emotional turmoil in Arjuna, and there is mental turmoil where he's completely confused about what is right and what is wrong. And Gita is being spoken in that context. That's point number 1. Point number 2, that Gita is a conversation. It is not a sermon. It is not one way. It is two-way. It's a dialogue. Point number 3, Krishna is talking to Arjuna, a deserving person, a person he loves. He's his best friend. Whatever is being said is being tailored to Arjuna. Krishna, you will notice him being exquisitely aware of the context of Arjuna, with tremendous amount of care he has for Arjuna, and he's speaking with that. And 4th and final point is the tremendous amount of respect that Arjuna had, that Krishna has for the mind of Arjuna. He never tells Arjuna, do this because I say so. It's always he's presenting things to him to consider, and he's asking him to look within his own deepest soul and speak, think, and act from it. So those are the 4 points I wanted to make. Next up is going to be Evanik, Allison, and Joe. Evanik.
So, thank you, Yogeshwar and Shrikant, for that. The first thing I wanted to, I just wanted to note, like, when Yogeshwar was talking about Arjun blew the instrument to start the war, I don't know if I missed it or just wasn't aware of it, but I wasn't aware that Arjun was actually starting the war by blowing the instrument. And then he stops. And I think that speaks to your point, Shrikant, about Arjun's mind and why Krishna respected it. Because instead of just acting without thinking, he acted. And then something that's very important is that he stopped in the middle of the action and he requested to see both sides. That just takes a lot of thinking. And sometimes, like, once something is started, for a lot of people, it's just hard to stop it. They just won't. And I think Arjun, you can tell by his mind that you can start something, you can start down a path and realize, wait, I didn't even take the time to think about it. And I didn't take the time to look at the people that are going to be involved. So I just thought that was great. I, you said that, I'm sorry, Sharikant said that the decision was being made. I think that just speaks to the point of what Arjun was doing. Like, the decision is being made to go to war. It hadn't already been made. So he's just stopping to think about it. And I think that was great. and that's it really. I mean, there's so many things I can comment on, but I'm going to be concise.
Thank you. Thank you. I will just say a couple of things in response. Yogeshwar, if anytime you have anything, just unmute and I will call on you. I'll say two things. You have to respect Arjun for what he's doing. This is not fear. He's not going away because he's afraid. He actually goes to the center between the two armies. And then what is his concern? His concern is, I want to do the right thing. And I don't know what's the right thing. That is his concern. So he is facing his deepest uncertainty and fear and facing it directly and saying, okay, what is the right thing? He's admitting his confusion. So I just have profound respect for him for that. Thank you. Next up is Allison, Joe, and Rupali. Allison.
When we first read this chapter, I kept thinking, what's the dilemma? Just run away. I kept thinking I would never want to go to war. I don't know why, and I felt like, is this going to be a pro-war book? And I was really sort of conflicted about all of that. And I really just did not understand the beginning. But then as this year went on, while we were reading it, the war in Ukraine broke out. And as all of those things happened, the thing that I was really struck by was I was thinking that for the men in Ukraine, that this must be what they felt. Because what is their duty? Was their duty to go with their wife and children that they were sending out of the country? Or was their duty to stay in the country and try to protect it, to keep it safe for the family? And, and what an awful, horrible decision, that must have been at the beginning when they were still able to make that decision. And, but it really just, it's bizarre to have such a real world thing happen that so completely crystallized this chapter.
Thank you. Thank you, Allison. Next up is going to be Joe, followed by Rupali. Joe.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very thankful for everyone's comments and Yogeshwar for again taking us through this, because I think walking back through this is helpful because it kind of gives us context to the journey that we've been on. And this is a conversation. This is how I thought about this. These are profound questions, and this whole chapter is setting up the questions that we have in our lives, how to handle everything that we deal with in our lives. It's how to overcome fear, or why does this senseless killing need to occur? It's asking these deep, profound questions, when you're reading the chapter, and Yogeshwar hit it, I hit it right on the head on in one of the verses, 44. Alas, we were engaged in committing a great sin. Who were we endeavoring to kill our own people through greed and of the pleasures of kinship? I mean, why am I doing this? He lays out an entire argument as to the challenges, the uncertainty that he feels. And you can feel that in this first chapter. What's the right thing to do? And as we go through the Gita, all these questions are answered on a very deep level through the yogas, through the gunas. It's almost, I feel like Krishna's listening to Arjuna in the sense that he's almost letting him say, okay, here's all my, these are all my problems in the world. Now I'll provide you with the solutions. And that's what this first chapter embodies. I think that it does it very well. In the second time you go through it, you see it much more clearly as to all the problems that it solves. Anyway, it is a beautiful story.
Thank you, Joe. So I'll say a couple of things. One thing that stands out here is that this is profoundly this worldly work. This is about this world. And by dealing with a situation, which is an extreme situation, it draws attention to the conflicts and difficulties that are part of this world. And it offers solutions for that. So it is deeply spiritual and it is deeply this worldly. It embraces all of the world with its everything that it has. And it embraces the deepest of the spirit at the same time. Next up is Rupali.
Thank you. I feel I want to make 2 points. One is from a literary point of view. Typically, a story has a beginning, middle, and end, but this story starts right in the middle with the problem. And the problem is so immense that now you're curious to know how it's going to be resolved. So I think just from a literary point of view, it's written really well. The second point I want to make is that the Gita is a guide for practical living. And yes, it is a story. It is a dialogue between Arjun and Krishna, but we have these challenges in our lives. What is our war that we are fighting? Is it an illness? Is it a conflict with another person? Is it our own internal conflict? Learning to identify, learning to stop, like Evanik said, people don't stop. And learning to stop and question, I think, is a way to learn from Arjun. And then seeking the path is what you have to find your own Krishna in life. That is the biggest takeaway for me from this chapter. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Rupali. Great observations. Thank you. Next up is Brian. Brian, go ahead.
Well, I'll just say for me, the chapter 1 makes this entire makes it possible for me to relate to Arjun, because this is a very relevant type of situation for me in my life. So it just captures my attention when in this first chapter as an introduction.
Thank you, Brian. So I will, I just want to make one comment on what Rupali said. It sets off this massive conflict in the beginning itself, and then it's a physical conflict. It is a conflict in the world, on the battlefield. So ideas, philosophy is not something to be done in ivory tower. It is something that belongs in the field, in life, in everything. That is, that's what comes through. Ella, go ahead.
Yes, thank you for using the universal ways of explaining this, Shrikant. It helped me to understand it. And I also think it's about courage. Some of the things were mentioned. It's about awareness, being acutely aware, being torn, as we all can be in our lives, in conflicts with people we care about in situations where our choices are limited or we have no choice, but we have to make decisions. And they're tough choices, like Sophie's choices in life. And having the courage and to face them. And yeah, I appreciated how you explained it. Also, it gave me more insight with the universal understandings. Thank you.
Thank you, Ella. Yogeshwar, can we go to chapter 2? And chapter 2 is something that we did not have chance to go through with you. So please take your time, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, whatever you want on chapter 2.
Sure. अथ द्वितीयोऽध्यायः. So what happened in now, he has laid out himself in front of Krishna. And this is one important thing to do. Like, if you have something that is within you, you first have to know how to lay it out in front of somebody else. With the right words, with what you are rightly feeling. When you're able to do that, then the other person is also able to help. Arjuna is able to rightly pour his heart out in front of Krishna. Now, Krishna starts from a point where he says that, why are you doing such cowardly acts? Yeah? Why are you thinking like this? This is not a Kshatriya who is talking in front of me. That is the first point he comes upon. Now, these two verses are also unique in a way that Krishna doesn't say anything about yoga. He doesn't say anything about the right thing to do. He doesn't say anything about dharma. He directly addresses Arjuna that I do not see the Kshatriya within you. I do not see the warrior within you, who you are. And when such an opportunity has come, such like when something like this has come, like a war has come, where is your warrior that is within you? Like directly addressing Arjuna for who he is, not for any abstract concepts, not for anything that like Arjuna is not ready to hear. So Krishna is directly addressing Arjuna. And he directly says that this Hridaya Daurbalyam, meaning this cowardness that you have got, that you have gotten, just leave it and get up, O Arjuna. Like, Tyaktva Uttishta Parantapa. In one way, these two verses, it shows that when you're directly approaching somebody, yeah, you should not start by telling him like the deep concepts and the deep yoga or dharma. What happens is first directly approach him, like get to him, get to who he is, get to his, if he's a warrior, get to it. If he's a person who is doing business, get to it. If he's a student, get to it. He should know that he is one. And then allow him to say why actually, because there's so many different layers of a person. When you first ask him why do you not want to do something, he gives you a layer. When you prick under that layer, when you remove that layer from in front of him, you tell him that you are a student, so you should be such a kind of mode. You're a warrior, so this should not be affecting you. Then he gets to the rightful layer of where the problem is. And we are all like that. Like, whenever we are showing our problems to somebody else, we show that yes, we have a problem. The problem is rightful, but the way we are showing it, there are layers to it. I'm not saying that Arjuna wanted to hide something, no, but this is how we normally show our problems. This is a normal person showing his problem. The normal person will not start from the deepest part of his problem. He will start from what he thinks is his problem. When you remove the first layer, the second layer of his problem is when he gets to the rightful, the deepest part of his problem. Like, this is the thorn that is pricking me inside. If you can help me get rid of that, then the others are just the peripheral of it. Then Arjuna gets to it, because he has also pointed out, like in chapter 1, that he has pointed out that we are going into this grave mistake, this mahat papa that he puts, yad rajya sukha lobhena, hantum swajana mudyata. So he gets to the point whereby, tell me, am I doing all this out of the greed of a kingdom? If it is that, then I should not be doing it. Yeah? He gets to the deepest points that any scripture could take you to. Takes you about himsa and ahimsa. He points out, like, if I am doing it out of greed, then I should not do it. Then if I'm doing it for the kingdom and I have my family, then I'll choose my family over the kingdom. He points out all these, like, normally, even in our normal daily lives, these are deep concepts. They're not like concepts that you will get just on the surface. These are deep concepts. You have to think about them. You have to contemplate about them. Arjuna is touching upon them. But Krishna is saying that, is that really the point? Or can I surface out something else? Then Arjuna says that Katham aham bhishmam sankhe hanye. How can I wage war against Bhishma and Drona? These are the two most prominent figures on the other side of the battlefield. And he points them out. How can I wage war against these two people? And he says that, first of all, they are Guru. Guru nahatva himahanubhava. First of all, they are my Guru. I have learned something out of them. And there is a great reverence towards any Guru, even a person who has taught you this something, like anything worldly. There is great reverence to that person. Like, he has taught me something in this world. If a person has taught you something adhyatmic, something spiritual, then there's even great reverence towards that person. And these two people showed them all their way through their life. Like, any doubts that they had, any conclusions that they couldn't get to, it was these two people who would always unravel them. So he says that, first of all, they are Guru, they are our teachers. Second of all, not only that we see them as Guru, but even the whole world sees them as Guru. Means, if they are not there, then even the kingdom that we are going to run in the future, in abstract, it wouldn't be able to run such well. And the other thing is, Hatvartha kamans tu gurun nihaiva, punjiya bhogan rudhira pradighan. The other part he's pointing out is that we are doing this out of greed. We want the kingdom. So if it is out of greed, does our greed weigh more than the teacher who is in front of us? This is the dilemma that he's putting across. And he's telling Krishna, I am weighing these two things. And I see that a person who has taught me even ABCD or Ka Kha Ga weighs more, way more than just my greed. And then he also lays out that karparnya dosho pahata swabhava prichhami tvam dharma samudha cheta. So this is now where he comes back, that yes, I can see this. Now, I also know my own self right now, that I am in a dilemma. Karparnya dosho pahata swabhava. Yeah, I am in a dilemma right now. I am in an emotional turmoil. Right now, if you tell me to take a decision, I will not be able to take a decision in the right mind. So now, since I can see that you are of a clear mind, tell me what I should do. Yat shreyasyan nishchitam bruhitanme. Tell me what I should do. And then, not only that, Arjuna is able to say this. Right? This is like the ghee out of all, this is like the grit out of all the dugdha. So this is the ghee out of all the milk. Arjuna is saying that, tell me what I should do. Not only that, Shishyasteham Shadhimam Tvam Prapanna. I am your Shishya. So tell me what I should do now. You see, there's a fact where we tell somebody that, tell me what I should do. That's fine, because we may go according to what they say. We may accept their logic or we may reject their logic. It's two-way. But when you say that I am a Shishya, accept me as a Shishya and then tell me what I should do, then there is this acceptability that I am open to your suggestion now. There are two ways of approaching anybody for a solution. You may approach somebody for a solution having already a decision within yourself. So what you're asking for that person is that, just allow me, yeah, just allow me to get at par with this decision that I have. This is the first kind of person. Now the next kind of person is saying that I have this dilemma, yes. I am putting it in front of you, and then tell me what I should do. I do not have a decision ready-made. And the first kind of person, when he'll go to somebody, he'll just look for that one point that shows that his decision is accepted. Then he doesn't care about the logistics of the decision, at what point they were made, or what lays beneath the decision itself, the emotions and the logic. What he'll just look for is that a person greater than me accepts the decision that I make. That's it. I'll go on with the decision. However, Arjuna here is saying that I have a dilemma, and I also do realize that that dilemma is right. However, I myself are in an emotional turmoil. I cannot take any decision rightfully at this point in time. So accept me as a Shishya. And not only that, I can see you, that you are the only one who can take away this dilemma from me, this sanshaya. And what should I do out of this dilemma? Because this doubt is profound. It's not something that can just be taken away maybe by small words, or you just giving me some shallow logic about it. That won't help me. You should give me something profound that is even deeper than my emotional turmoil. Then it will be able to pluck out the emotional turmoil. Having said that, Sanjay is saying that now Krishna is at a point that he's able to address the real turmoil that Arjuna has. Should I weigh my greed more than the people who have taught me? This is what Arjuna is putting in front of Krishna. And then Krishna, with verse 11, starts this yoga that he's going to talk about. He's starting the Jnana Yoga first. And starting Jnana Yoga has its way of putting it in front of Arjuna, in a way, because Jnana Yoga is profound. First of all, it tells you to get out of your emotions. It separates you from your emotions and says that you are not your emotions. You are not your thoughts. So realize that. You're not your thoughts, you're not your emotions, you're not also your body. You're something separate from it. The way you're putting up your dilemma, think about it. You are saying that you are a Pandita. That's what he gets at with the first verse, verse 11. You're saying that you're a Pandita, you're laying out all this logic in front of me. However, think about it from this point of view. You are not the emotions, you are not the body, you are not the mind. If this is true, then you are Atman. If even that is true, then what will happen is that everybody is the same. It's not that you are Atman and the rest of their bodies. Everyone, it's true for everyone. Now, who will die? And who is supposed to die? In this, you're saying that people are going to die. Vast majority of people are going to die. However, think about it. Are you giving out logic of a Pandita? Or are you giving out logic of a lay person? Gata suna gata sunscha, nanu sochanti pandita. For that which is going to die, it's obviously going to die. Think about it. And that which is not going to die, it's obviously not going to die. So why worry about it? Why worry about any of the two facets? The other point that Krishna is saying, that I have always been here and you have always been here, because we are both at the first point, at the point of this chapter, where Arjun can point towards, can look towards, is the Atman. So this is the way Arjuna is interpreting this. Arjuna is interpreting this, that Krishna is telling me that I am Atman and he is also Atman. Everybody is Atman, separate from the body. When we have established this, then we should know that Atman never dies. If that is true, then has always been here and will always be here. So there's nothing about the Atman that is dying. Then Krishna gives an example that there is also a phase in your life. In the same way that you're a child, you grow up, and then you become old. There's a child stage, there's a youth stage, and there's an old age. Does anybody say when he transitions from when he is a child to when he's a youth, does he say that the child has died? No, that doesn't happen. This is the same thing, that the Atman is always there. What changes are the bodies. And how do they change? It's just like clothes changing. If a cloth has been destroyed, then you'll just put it aside and take another cloth upon your body. This is the same way. And also, what you should know about the Atman is that Nainam Chindanti Shastrani, Nainam Dahati Pavaka, Na Chainam Kledayantyapo, Na Shoshayati Maru. There is nothing in the world that we know, because it's talked about all the four elements that are really graspable by the intellect. One is any Shastra, which represents Prithvi. It represents the earthly form, like anything that is able to be molded. That cannot destroy you. Another thing is fire. Then maybe fire can destroy you because fire destroys so many things. No, fire can also not destroy you. Another thing may be, if fire cannot destroy you, then it's something that is destructible by water. Also, that's not the case. Then what about wind? Something may be destroyed by wind then, because those are the four things that can destroy something in our world. Nothing else can destroy anything. The others, they're just permanent. These four, they can evolve, they can also be destroyed, and they can also destroy something else. So these four do not destroy you. What you should know from this is that we are immortal, like the Atman itself is immortal. If you're looking from the perspective of the body, then it's the wrong perspective. You should get to the perspective of the Atman. You should also know that how the Atman feels when you experience it. Ascharyavat pashyati kaschidena. Ascharyavat vatati tathaiva chanya. Ascharyavat chainam anya shrunoti. Shrutvapi enam vedana chaiva kaschid. This is how subtle the Atman is itself. Ascharyavat pashyati kaschidena. Only some people, now it depends on what words you emphasize, only some people can look at the Atman, can see the Atman for what it is. And having seen it, even less people can say it out. Ascharyavat vadati tathaiva chanya. Only less people can say it out. And then, out of those who are saying now, less people are able to listen to it, because people do not want to listen to this subtle knowledge that is about the Atman. Less people will be able to listen to it. And then you will say that, oh, we can get crowds to listen to Gnana. Then Krishna is saying, then you're getting it wrong. Shrutva pienam vedana chaiva kaschit. Having listened to it, nobody actually gets it, what this knowledge about the Atman is that I'm trying to tell you about. This knowledge is so subtle. Now, another way of interpreting the same verse is that Ascharyavat pashyati kaschidena. Those who see it, there are little people who see it, but those who see it, they see it as Ascharyavat. They see it as a wonder in front of them. And then those who also talk about it, they talk about it in wonder as well. This is something that is out of this world. You cannot put words to it, that this language can point towards it. That doesn't happen. And then those who even listen to it, they listen to it with wonder that this is something out of the world. How can it even be grasped into the mind? That's where Krishna says that Shrutvapi enam vedana chaiva kaschit. Even having listened to it, they realize, those who have listened to it realize that this cannot be grasped by me. And I realize that this is a metaphor pointing towards it, but I have not gotten onto the experience. This is how the person who even listens to it experiences it, that I have not yet gotten to it. I still have stages to go onto it. And then Krishna goes on to the other part about, let's say that you run away from this war. This is just a let's say. What will happen? Look at your Kshatriya Dharma. Look at the people who are going to come after you and who are going to be Kshatriya. And for our perspective, let's talk about the soldiers who are at war. They're protecting our borders in all ways, yeah? Whether it's the Navy whether it's the Air Force, whether it's the soldiers literally at the borders of our countries. Those people, they protect. Even there are those who protect from the inside, and there are those who also protect from the outside, all of them into perspective. What will happen? If a person like Arjuna runs away from war, what do those people also get from this? They are getting that if such a person can run away from war when somebody is coming upon their country, then we also have a perspective that we can also run away from this war that we are in. Do you want to give this perspective to the people who come after you? This is what Krishna is asking Arjuna. Then also, you are a figure in all their minds. You should not forget that. Yeah? And they will also tell you all kinds of things that you run away from the war. Would you also be able to take that? Because you are Kshatriya. Krishna knows Arjuna because he is a Kshatriya type of person, not any kind of person. When somebody tells a Kshatriya about his own Prakriti, like you're a Kshatriya and you should be at war, like it's just like telling a soldier that when the greatest of difficulties came, you put your back at the difficulty. How will that person feel? And for a soldier, it is better for like bullets to be put into his chest rather than bullets to be put on his back. So for anybody who is in that situation, he realizes that this is not something that I should be doing. Then Krishna puts out the point that that is also something that you should regard. The last thing I'm going to talk about, Jnana Yoga, is this. Sukha dukhe same kritva labha labho jaya jayo tato yuddhaya yujyasva naivam papam avapsyasi. If you put happiness and sorrow together, they should weigh the same. If you put labha and alabha, meaning getting something and losing everything, if you put them together, they should weigh the same for you. Whether you're going to win this war or whether you're going to get destroyed in this war, or whether you're going to just go into parajaya, you're going to lose this war, it should weigh the same. That is one criteria that you should put. When these three criteria have been met, what will happen? You will be able to do this war, to get into the war, but you will not do any bad deeds. This is what Krishna is saying. Because where bad deeds evolve from, now Krishna is getting to a point of impact whereby what are bad deeds? Huh? Why is Krishna telling Arjuna that you may go into war, but it will not be a bad deed? What is a bad deed? What's the definition? Is what Krishna is saying. The definition is when you do it for your own happiness, not regarding other people. When you do it for your greediness, not regarding other people. When you do it for your own benefit, when you do it for your own victory, not regarding other people. This is when bad deeds creep into your action. When these are not there, then your action is not bad itself. Because what happens is normally we see action from the front. From the front, I mean what a person is doing with his body. But Radha Krishna is saying, look at the intention of the action. This is where, whether it is bad or good, arises. When you get to that, is when you'll be able to know whether your action is right or it is wrong. Then After this, Krishna goes on to the other side of it. He has talked about Sankhya, which is Jnana Yoga. Now Krishna is talking about Karma Yoga. That I have told you about Sankhya. Now I will tell you about Karma, Karma Yoga. Having known Karma Yoga, what will happen? All the Karma Bandha, all the ties with Karma will just be dissolved. And Krishna takes him on a journey that they are this Kriya Vishesha Bahula, Bhogeshwarya Gatim Prati. They're all this karma we do. And I do understand that all this karma we do, it's out of greed, it is out of maybe victory, that I want victory, that's why you do the karma. However, what you should do is get out of your desires, get out of the attachments, get out of the attachment even of happiness. When you're able to do that, see yourself different, then you should be able to get the difference between the karma that somebody is doing with greed and somebody who is doing the same karma, it may be, but without greed or without the importance given to the victory. It is the importance given to karma, Krishna is saying, that is important here. When you do that, you realize that karmarnyevadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana ma karma phala heturbhur ma te sangosto karmani. What you should do is do karma, because that is what you can do. That is what is within your reach. The fruit of that karma is not within your reach. So do not worry about it. When you're not worried about that fruit of the karma, you're able to invest all your attention, all your concentration onto the karma. Now that karma cannot go wrong. This is an important thing now, because when you invest all your attention towards that karma cannot go wrong. That is really important. When we're dividing our attention, the karma, the fruit, and how it will impact other people and all that, when you're dividing our attention, we cannot do this particular type of karmas so well. We can't do it with all our heart into it. And then also, ma karma phal hetu, you should also not be the reason for the karma that is happening. You should also not be the reason for the fruit that is going to happen. Then Arjuna would say, I may not do karma at all. So Krishna is saying, Mate sangostva karma. You should not also get attached to a karma. You should also not get attached to tamasa. What should Arjuna do then? Yogastha kuru karmani sangam tyaktva dhananjaya. You should always have a yogastha buddhi. This is really important on how Krishna evolves this idea of yogastha buddhi. He takes Arjuna on a journey, telling him just the nitty-gritties here and there for what yogastha buddhi means. Then he will take him on a journey that this is what I was actually trying to say. Maybe you got to it or not. So get to the yogastha buddhi. Everything becomes sama, siddhya siddhya samo bhutva, samatvam yoga uchyate. Tells Arjuna that what is yoga? Samatva is the yoga that I'm talking about. And this samatva is really important. If you can get to this samatva, nobody can take you down within your karma. And what you should also know is yoga karma sukaushala. You should also know that yoga is the kusharta in any karma. Now, there's so many ways of taking this about what Krishna was telling Arjuna. One way of looking at it is that When you're able to do your karma the perfect way with kusharta, that is yoga. But then we do not really get to the depth with that definition. However, using that definition itself, it has the depth within it. But then as we know that what our kusharta in any karma means, what we know as kusharta in any action, it doesn't amount to this. It doesn't amount to the depth of what Krishna wants to say. However, we can come to the depth of this way of approaching it after knowing the depth. When we say that yoga karma sukoshalam, get to the depth. What does it mean? That yoga is a way of doing karma. When you do that karma in a particular way, you'll do it with such technique that instead of binding you, yeah, because normally karma binds you, but instead of binding you, that karma will actually take you up. It will unbind you from the karma. When you're able to do such karma that unbinds you, that is what yoga means. And that is what kusharta, Krishna is saying. That what is kusharta? It is doing the same thing that other people may be doing, but doing it with such technique that instead of getting the result of other people, you get a result that you want, which is unbinding you from all the tensions, unbinding you from all the doubts, unbinding you from what other people would see as binding. So what Krishna is saying, do all your karma, don't run away from it, but do it with that kusharta, that even while you're doing your karma, you're approaching spirituality, you're approaching the adhyatma, even using that karma itself. Then what Arjuna is now asking, that yes, I have known about the yogastha buddhi that you've just told me about, and I have also known about that I am Atman. But you see, where Arjuna is asking this question from is not from the Atman. We also do realize this at this point. It's not the Atman that is asking this question. However, knowing these concepts helps him get to that state. Now Arjuna is asking that Sthita Pragyasya ka bhasha samadhisthasya keshava Sthitadhi kim prabhasheta kimasita vrajeta kim. Arjuna is now asking that person who is of a yogastha buddhi and also knows that I am Atman and I am different from this body, I am that which cannot be affected by anything that happens to this body. How can you know him? What are his characteristics? Then also, how does he talk in front of other people? How does he sit? And also, how does he walk upon this path? How can we know him? Then Krishna points out four distinct layers about how a person could be and how you could know him. Prajahati yada kaman sarvan partha manogatan atmanyevatmana tushtas ita pragyastadocyate. If a person is able to get past all his desires, and he is also able to just stay within his Atman, always. Now, what Krishna means by always is that at no point in time does he act from his body or does he act from his emotions. He acts from his Atman, his consciousness always. There's no time he diverges from that. Then Krishna takes him on layers. Now, that we can put as the first layer. This is how you'd know him. But then this is the deepest layer that Krishna is talking about. Like, how would you know a person is acting from his Atman? Then Krishna takes on to the second layer, that dukheshu anudvigna mana, sukheshu vigatas priya. This is how you can know that when that person is in sorrow, his mind is not in conflict. He's just there and he's able to accept that sorrow onto himself. Then also another point is that some people are able to go in the downs of their own life, but when they go into the ups, something just goes out of place. So Krishna is saying that even in his own happiness, he doesn't derail from the path. He is not conflicted by fear, or he's also not conflicted by anger. Such a person, I say, is sthitadhi. He's a sthita prajna. When you talk about such a person, just imagine such a person who is not taken aback by any of these qualities. Then Krishna is also putting a third layer onto it. That how can you really know now? Sarvatra anabhisnehas tat tat prapya shubha shubham nabhinandanti na dveshti tasya pragya pratishtita. Now you can know from his face that is he getting into the sorrow, is he getting into the happiness? He should not also get into the happiness and the sorrow just by getting things from the outside. And the fourth is that when things are coming from the outside, he knows this. He is intelligent and he does not get attached to that. What he's able to do is yada samharate chayam kurmo nangani vacha sarvasha indriyani indriyarthesh yes tasya pragya pratishtita. He is able to get all his senses and put them back into his Atman. This is a certain type of intelligence. Like when we know something else is influencing us, can we know that influence? And then can we go back to our Atman and say that, should I work according to the influence or should I work from my Atman? Should I react or should I respond? Now, there's a difference between that. Should I react to the situation or should I respond to the situation? Because when you respond from the Atma. When you react, you're just reacting from the periphery. Then Krishna also points out this well-known verse, Vishaya vinivartante niraharasya dehinah rasavarjam rasopyasya param drishtva nivartate. When we're talking about the senses, that is one thing. Then we're talking about the sense object, that is also something. Then Krishna is now talking about yourself, who is attracted to the sense object through the senses. All those perspectives are in place up to now. But then taking it deeper, now Krishna is saying, also not a person who just runs away, because as we know, we could think about a person who just runs away from sensual objects. What Krishna is saying, not only that person, don't take that explanation for the above verse. The explanation you should take is that he is able to take his senses out of the sense objects and take it into the Atman, but he is able to take it into the Atman is the main thing. Not only that he's able to run away from. Rasa varjam rasopyasya param drishtva nivartate. Somebody may be able to replicate running away, like taking to himself, but if he's not taking him into the Atman, then the rasa, which is the fourth perspective in this, The interest in the sense objects will not dissolve. The attachment in the sense objects will not dissolve. When does it dissolve? It only dissolves when he's able to get past and put his own vritti into the Atma. That is only when he's able to get past all this. That is when he's called Sthita Prajna. Why Krishna is building this boundary is that when we talk about characteristics, we have to talk about characteristics that people like us understand. When we start understanding something, we tend to think that I have understood it. Now, this is the problem that normally happens with telling somebody for him to understand. One point is that which he won't understand. When somebody wants to bring it down to a point where he can understand, the other person now feels like, oh, I have understood it. It's all within my intellect. I don't have to go anywhere. What happens is that now he's not able to take the journey, having understood what I have to get to. Krishna is building up all this, that yes, understand that this actually is. Then also know that you have to walk the journey. Don't get stuck just in the understanding. If you get stuck just in the understanding, your attachments will be there. Your desires will all be there. You will be interested in the sense objects, but you will just be clinging back. You will not be able now that when that happens, it may seem that you have pulled back from the sense objects right now, but truly you have not, because rasavarjam rasopyasya param drishtva nivartate. Everything may dissolve, but its ras, meaning the attachment that it has onto itself, will not dissolve. It only dissolves when you're able to get to the Atma. Krishna now is going on to how anything actually arises. Yeah? Dhyayato vishayan pumsan sangasteshu upajayate. Now I'll just lay out what this means. Yeah? When you are constantly contemplating upon a particular type of object, what happens? An attachment arises. This is how attachment arises. When you're constantly thinking about Sangat Sanjayate Kama, when you're constantly contemplating upon it, when you're constantly desiring it now, you've got an attachment. When that attachment arises, the desire to get onto it arises. It's not that the desire first arises and then attachment. No, first attachment, then the desire to get upon it. Then, when you're not able to get onto it, the anger arises. And even while you're getting to the desired object, the anger is there for anybody who may stop you from getting to it, for anybody who may obstruct you from getting to it. And from the anger now, sammoha, the delusion arises. When you're deluded, smriti brahma, all that you have known, like we always know that when we are in anger, there is this type of delusion that is always there. When we're in delusion, we cannot think straight. We do not know all our experiences that we have had from the beginning of our life. We tend to forget who is our teacher or who is an elder to us, or in front of whom should we act in some accordance. We forget that. So that's Smriti Brahma. We forget everything. When Smriti Brahma constantly happens, this is Buddhi Nasha. When your intellect has been dissolved, has been taken away from you, it's destructive now. Then even the person himself, pranashyati. Buddhi Nashat pranashyati. That is the whole step, how something arises and what it can take you to This is really important because, you know, this is sort of a technique that this is how something happens. Know it, that this is how something happens. When you know how something happens, then you're also able to tackle it at whichever level you are in. You're able to get past it. However, if you do not know how something arises, you're not able to get past it. Then Krishna goes on to that if a person is not in this yogastha buddhi, then he does not have buddhi at all. He does not have the intellect itself, because the intellect itself is what brings about right thinking. As we know, as like we have been doing philosophy for long, like even myself, and I know, like in the West, philosophy is prevalent, but we know that both sides can be gotten to by any type of logic. Both sides of the logic. It's just that whose intellect is clear, that he will be able to pull the rattle. When we know that our intellect is clear, we know what stand we are taking. And it's not out of delusion that we're taking that stand. It's not just that logic takes us to a stand. It is also our emotional turmoil that can take us to a stand. It's because we're in depression that we'll just take one side. Now, Krishna is saying that is not through the intellect that you're taking that stand. It's just out of buddhi nasha that you're taking that stand. You have nothing to go on to. When you're always going into your sense objects, into your senses, when you're always giving into your senses, what will happen? Indriyanam hi charatam yanmanonu vidhiyate tadasya harati pragyam vayurnavam ivambhasi. When you're always going into the sensual pleasures, you do not have a sthita bhi. You don't have a sthita pragyam. Why is that so? Whenever a sense object arises in front of you, all your intellect, all yourself will just go onto it. You'll not be able to stand back and say, should I go or should I not go on? Then what should you do? Who is the sthit prajna then? Ya nisha sarva bhutani yasyam jagrati sanyam yasyam jagrati bhutani sa nisha pashyato mina. You should also know this, that the night and the day that we normally see is not how it is actually in front of us, because we may, in our own emotional turmoil, we may see something as light, like, oh yes, this person is saying the truth. But if it's out of buddhi nasha, if it's out of our own emotional turmoil that we're saying that, then that is the night actually. And those who know, they can see this, that people are not taking their decisions from the right place, which is the intellect. They're not taking the decisions from the intellect, from the clear intellect. What they're saying is that I can just drive onto this one type of logic and it will just take me. Or if somebody has said something, I'll just be swayed away by that. That is not something having a sthita buddhi. And yasyam jagrati bhutani sa nisha pashyatum. In that intellect where people are saying, oh, I have known, those who really know, they are seeing that as the darkness of intellect. Then what is the intellectual type? What is that person who has a sthita buddhi? Apuryamanam achalam pratishtham samudramapa pravishati yadva. The example that is given here now is that there is a vast ocean. So many rivers may be pouring into that ocean, but this type of person is such a person that however many types of sensual objects may be put into him, may be put in front of him, however many doubts may be put in front of him, he is as he is. He is this Nischala Samudra. He is this ocean that is always as it is. And Krishna says that Esha Brahmi Sthiti Partha Nainam Prapya Vimuhyati Sthitva Syamanta Kalepi Brahma Nirvanam Ichchati. This is a type of sthiti, this is a type of pragya, this is a type of dhya. If you are constantly within that type of pragya, you never get deluded by any doubts. If you are within this type of pragya, then you are definitely going to get peace. You're definitely within bliss. There is nothing that can take you away from that bliss.
Wonderful. Yogeshwar, that was just incredible. That was incredible. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm going to make 6 points, and then I want to open it up for any questions. Yogeshwar, can you tell me what time you need to leave?
8:30 will be fine. 11 there.
Sure. Okay, so I'll make 6 points quickly. First point, Arjun is ready. Most people are not ready. Arjun is ready. He is honest about what he doesn't know. He admits to himself and to Krishna about his state and asks for help. That is the starting point. You can't do anything without it. In chapter 18, Krishna says that if a person is not ready, don't speak to him about this, because it's going to be not useful at all, because they won't hear it. Arjuna is ready to hear, and he is very honestly, very humbly, with the fullest confidence in his friend, he's asking. That is the starting point. Second, it is stunning how quickly Krishna gets to the heart of the matter. He says, and this is where he describes the Sankhya, he says, you are Atman. Atman is basically your center. He's saying, you are the center. That's who you are. And the center and the world is one. So world is produced by the center. Everything in the world is produced by the center. And you are the center. And that is knowledge. Third, small point. See how Krishna weaves in the social consequences. It's not just about individual. It is about the individual and society at the same time. The namaste, it's like if you are acting from the center and you're speaking to the center of the other person, it is completely transformative. So the magic that happens when you focus on your center, how it happens to your life. Same kind of thing happens between people. Next point is one of the most famous lines, Karmanye vadikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. What he's saying is that your when you act from the center, you're being virtuous. This is virtue ethics. When you're focused on virtue, when you're focused on doing the right thing all the time, that is acting from the center, everything else takes care of itself. If you get focused on the values themselves, and that distracts you from acting from the center, doing what you should be doing, because you get attached, you're trying to hold on to something, that is going to hurt you. That is not acting from the center. The culmination of this chapter is the concept of Sthita Prajna. Again, I was starting to see it in chapter 2. So early, and he's actually showing you the whole thing in that. You know, that is what you're trying to get at through the entire discourse, but he's providing it in brief, in such a powerful way in this chapter 2. What are the elements of it? Essentially, it is nothing but, Sthita Prajna is nothing but staying at your center and acting from it. Note, it is not center versus the world. It is not center versus the periphery. It is acting from the center. So letting the life break in upon you, letting all of life to break in upon you. And you are able to take that in and then breaking out from the center on a continual basis, never losing that, never moving from the center. So that is what it is. And you will have actions, you will have emotions, you will have thoughts. All of these are these transient things, are the motions that are happening between center and the world. And if you get attached to them, moment you get attached to them, you're going somewhere other than the center, and you're trying to hold on to it. And in that same action, you stop being at the center. And it doesn't matter whether the emotion is positive or negative. Holding on to it stops you from being at the center. Just make sure I get this right. One of the beautiful ways he summarizes this is that night and day. Because most people are acting from the periphery, and the light is at the center. The light is at the center, and there is darkness. But people who are acting from the periphery have turned their back to the light, so they don't even see the light. So for a person who is acting from the center, being at the center is the light. And as you go away from this, when you are not at the center, that is darkness. For a person who is only focused on the periphery, they do not even know what the center is. So for them, all that they see, all that is lighted is the periphery. And because they never look at the light and have turned their back on the light, that's where darkness is. So this, I really love this distinction between the night and day. All right. Now I'm going to open it up for any comments from anybody, please go on and type an exclamation mark. Start with Joe.
So I have a few points that I'll make. And the first one is that action, must be done for action's sake, that it not be done for any kind of selfish reasoning, any attachment to things, to objects. And that's the idea of self, understanding oneself, so that you're doing it because this is transformative. This is what transcendentalism actually adopted, part of this. So the other point is that Arjuna lets go of his ego. He's saying, tell me what to do. Tell me. It's not just in scripture. Tell me. I need advice. I'm torn. So please, give me the answers. And what that is, there's letting go of the ego, but there's also an asking for knowledge. What is the right action to take in this particular situation? What do I need to know? And then we get into karma and Jnana Yoga, so that we start to understand the different paths to the center. And that's important. But one of the really critical points about this chapter is understanding the root causes of our desires. Because if you don't understand why you desire something, you can't demonstrate the self-control in order to conquer that desire. And this is why knowledge is so important, and intelligence is so important. It's and if you don't understand your desires, then you're misdirected. And what you take as to be true ends up being false. What you pursue in life ends up being the wrong action, because you're not acting from a place. And this is fundamental, as Yogeshwar had talked about, to the idea of wisdom, like that, why it's so important in the West, and in Western philosophy, the same thing, the idea of wise action. What is the action that I should take under what conditions? The understanding of oneself, then, this process of understanding yourself, understanding your own personal desires, allows you then to act out. And it supports all the relationships that you have with other people. And this is the namaste. This is the transformative part of the Gita to me. One of them. But if I were to take one thing, like, this is it. It's understanding yourself so that you can act out in the world and see, the Atman, the spirit in everyone. And that is a lot of work, and it's very difficult to do. And it's also the importance of virtue ethics within this. As you talked about, you understand why you're pursuing virtue. You're not pursuing virtue just for virtue's sake. That's the problem sometimes, and we talked about this the other night, the ritual, but this is moving beyond scripture, beyond ritual. This is something that is much deeper than that. So I had some other comment, but I forget. Anyway. You're on mute.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe. So I want to say three things about what you said. Number one is action for action's sake. That is virtue ethics. It connects, this way of thinking connects very well with all traditions of virtue ethics. you're doing the right thing. You're trying to identify the eternal principles that are true, and you're acting in accordance with that. And you're always starting, always going back to that and acting from that. You talked about letting go of the ego. That is huge. Letting go of the ego. Arjuna is one of the greatest warriors of all times. And he is saying that, look, my hands are trembling, my emotions are in turmoil, I am confused. That's the state I'm in. And then he asks, that's the starting point. This discourse goes right to the heart of the doctrine of Great Gita, the core idea of center and periphery. That's what this names directly right in the beginning. We're going to see ways of approaching it in so many different ways afterwards. But here it is, in the most essential terms. We are going to look at gunas and how they work. That's a more detailed way of understanding this. But this is the heart of the message of Gita. I want to note that knowledge in Gita is knowledge of the center. Knowledge as seen mostly in the West, you think of knowledge as knowledge of tables and chairs, of parts of the external world, of the periphery. Knowledge, jnana yoga, that is being talked about here, is knowledge of the center, of the core of you, and what it is, how it functions, and how that is Brahma, and that it is, it's the unmanifest, which is going to manifest, which is manifesting everything. So that is what knowledge is about. Okay, next up is Evanik. Sorry, Joe, you had something?
Yeah, the unmanifest is, I think, the important, but the last part is this also all sets up moving beyond our sensory experiences. And so that's a really important part of this chapter. It sets up everything. Anyway, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Thank you. No problem, Joe. Thank you. Next up is Evanik.
Okay, so I have 2 points. So I'll go to the first point. When Yogeshwar was talking about running away from the war and it being, and how it would affect his soldiers and how it would affect people. And I think that's one of those things where I think it's the key of where you're acting from. Are you acting from the center? In which case, yes, that will affect people, but you will, I guess you will, it'll be for a good intention, because trying to form the thought, it would be with a good intention, because you would be, not attached. It wouldn't be about you. It would be about, your action would be about, just for the sake of action, and to, like, the difference between the bad deed and the good deed is, the bad deed is when you're acting so that you're attached to the desire and you're attached to what you want and no one else. And but the example of the soldier was great, because he made Arjun think about, how's this act going to affect other people? And we like to say, and especially in Western culture, that that part shouldn't matter. It should only be about you. And, yes, it will affect other people. Yes, you may hurt other people, but as long as you're happy, everything is good. And I think this kind of turns its head on that and says, no, no, that's not the way to be. Like, yes, you must act from your center, but you can't be attached to any of that. Like, not only how it affects you, but you have to look at it as, is this actually going to be good for other people? Is it going to be good for them? And it was just profound to me. And the second part that I wanted to talk about with running away, I was thinking of it as a person, if you applied it to everyday life, a person running away from their problems, like not getting to the root of it, not getting to the deep of it. And when you do that, you do hurt other people when you don't get to the root of your desires, because then your actions may hurt other people and you may not even realize it. So that was number two. And finally, number three, I had a thought about when you were talking about center and periphery and the center, and my thought was Howard Rourke from Fountainhead. And the reason why I thought of him is because he was always at the core of who he was. And when he was acting from his core, he wasn't attached to what people thought about him. He wasn't attached to, you know, material things. He wasn't attached to material wealth, to the point where in the book he takes a whole building out, that because it wasn't his design, and he knew the cost of it, he knew the risks of it, and he didn't care because that was the core of who he was, and he had put everything in it, and it was allowed to be butchered. And so it was better to destroy it. Now people would think that's a destructive behavior, but it just now dawned on me, like, it was who he was. He was putting himself in his architecture. And then I was thinking of Dominique, and Dominique being drawn to Howard Rourke, but Howard Rourke's telling her basically, like, Krishna tells Arjuna, you're not ready. You're not ready for this. Because you want me too much. It's when it was almost like Dominique had to give up the attachment, because she would have did anything that Howard Rourke said. She had to give up that attachment to Rourke in order to really have work, which is like kind of like the metaphor of having the scepter. She had to give up all those attachments. She had to give up the attachment of being rebellious for the sake of being rebellious. She had to give up all of that. And only then could she wind up with Howard Rourke. Only then was she ready for Howard Rourke. And yes, I do understand that I am taking a turn for Howard Rourke, which I didn't do during the Fountainhead series, but yeah, I get that. So
Thank you, Evan.
that was just what I thought about.
Thank you, Evanik. Yogeshwar, if you want to make any final comments before you have to go on chapter 2, please go ahead.
So in chapter 2, the main introduction is about the karma yoga and the jnana yoga, and how they relate to each other, how they're distinct. And it's really important to understand first their distinctions, like how they're distinct from each other, then also how they combine, how they supplement each other. Because if you don't know the distinctions, if you only go for the similarities, this is what happens. If you only go for the similarities, you'll make it so one that it will not be helpful to you. When you only get to the differences of it, what will happen is when your path is only one of them, the other will not be able to supplement your path. It will not be able to supplement you. And you'll always be against the other path. This is what happens normally. So what we should understand is that these two are there, their differences are there. Like, don't put the differences aside. No, differences are there. Accept the differences as they are, and then get to the similarities of them also. Get to how they supplement each other. And also try to figure out which type of temperament do I have, which one matches me. When we get to know which one matches me, then it's more helpful than anything else.
Thank you, Yogeshwar. We'll look forward to continuing this on chapter 3 tomorrow. So folks, I would like to continue to talk about chapter 2. Would love to hear what everybody says it. I am delighted that we got to hear Yogeshwar talk about chapter 2. Chapter 2 is one of my absolute favorites because it deals with the core theme right in the beginning. So chapter 1 sets up the context, and chapter 2 right in the beginning is the solution. It's the seed of the solution. It is that seed is developed through rest of the Gita. One point I want to make, now this is going to be a conversation, so go ahead and type exclamation mark. You're welcome to make any comments that you have. As you know, we are going through Gita chapter by chapter, looking at summaries. So over the next 2 or 3 meetups, we will go through all the 18 chapters. And chapter 2, because it summarizes the theme of the Gita, is a good place to actually speak at length about the core of Gita, because really the center and the periphery is the core idea as best as I understand it. So would love to hear what you have to say. So the one point I want to make is Gita says this is not about running away. Center is not about running away from the periphery. It is because if you are at the center, there are these lines going, causations going from the center to the periphery. The center, you're acting from the center in the world, and then you are taking in the world into the center. There is a continuous flow between the two. So it is not about saying no to the periphery. This is, in the Western context, it is deeply Aristotelian. It is deeply integrated. It is the integration of spirit and matter. It is the integration of principles and actions. It is the integration of concepts and percepts. It is a continuous flow between them and being able to see oneness in all world and capturing it at the center with universal principles. All right, so would love to hear from each of you about Gita. You're also welcome at this point to talk about what you think you would like to do in the next 3 meetups. You've got about either 2 or 3 meetups in order to go through these summaries. You can talk about how it was today and any thoughts. So the forum is open now for any questions or any comments about this process of wrapping up Gita, as well as detailed discussion on chapter 2. So whatever you would like, go ahead and type an exclamation mark. We'll start with Joe.
Yeah, just to build on something that this is very much the core of Gita in so many different ways, because, and I've understood this, and I've actually unfortunately asked, question twice or 2 or 3 times, and but I've always gotten the answer. It's just I really feel like this chapter 2 captures why this is not just about duty. It's about duty, but it's about you're doing it not necessarily, you're doing it as a selfless action, and why it's a selfless act. You're doing it as your duty. Does that make good?
And these are not what I would say is that both these concepts of duty and selfless action are rooted in the Western concepts.
Okay.
And the same issue is being dealt with in the Indian context in a very different way. So right. I would give up those terms in order to understand what is being said here. What is being said here is that the self is your center. The self is you, and the self is the universal principles shaping everything. When you act in accordance with that, that is what following the dharma, doing yoga means. That means you are acting from yourself, from your center. And because it is universal, it is according to the laws of nature, laws of the universe itself, and is consistent with goodness for everybody. So it is very much, you're saying you're acting from your center, you're acting from your Atma, you're acting from yourself. And there is a deep commonality that the center in you, that's the God in you, is the same as the God in others. And therefore, when you act from the center, you act in a win-win way with other people. So it is, if you want to use the word, so word selfless is definitely really at odds with the fact, because you're saying act from yourself. That's what Atma is, that is yourself, act from that. So it is not about that. So that's one thing. When you're doing the duty, what is that duty to? It is duty to the center. It is duty to the Brahman. It is duty to your Atma, which is the same action coming, if it was coming from a center of some other person. And it would be consonant with that. It would be resonant with that. It would support the action of another person acting in the same way. What happens is that in the Western conception, everything is periphery. Everything is periphery. So self is actually ego. In the terms of Gita, it would be ego. It is your attachment to your periphery, which you mistakenly think as the self. And then all of the conceptions of duty and selflessness and all of those are based on the fact that there is only periphery and there is no center. So the entire dialogue, entire principle of center and periphery is being missed in that dialogue because there is no center. Because center solves the problem. As you were saying, namaste is very profound because it's saying that you are relating to the core of the other person. And when two people are relating to the core of each other, then, and they're acting from it and to it, it is acting, its center, acting towards center. That action is a completely resonant, consonant, win-win, positive action. And that is a very different, this formulation of ethic, which Gita has, is very different than trying to understand it from the traditional Western concept of duty or selflessness. Does that make any sense?
It makes perfect sense. So would you, okay, there's like three questions. So
let's go ahead.
Is there anybody else? I mean, or I
No,
don't know. Okay.
One of the things that I don't want to do comparison between West and East, if possible. How about this? You list the questions and we can go from there.
Okay, we'll stay away from west and east. I'll just make the comment that's what I was actually thinking of, is the authentic relating between two selves.
Yes.
All right, that there's, if you're going internally and you're having this relationship, then there's this authentic relating. That's the beauty of the relationships, of looking inwards and having knowledge of self, so that you can then act with someone, like, in addition, and have it's like a foundation of a good relation, any relationship that we have, relationships with everybody. So it's yeah, that part.
Let's go to
I'll
Brian.
let Brian.
Come back.
Yeah. Okay.
Brian, folks, I would love to hear what everybody has to say. So just go ahead and type an exclamation mark to make any comments or ask any questions. Brian, go ahead.
So what you just said really resonated with me, in that the Gita, Gita works for me when it's accepted in its own terms. And that's, I mean, when I'm not thinking about it in its own terms, it doesn't work. I just don't, it doesn't work. So, but I would say that to me, well, I guess I'd say kind of a couple things. The key thing is this idea of the Atman, the witness. I call it the witness, which is just I don't know, it's hard to find words, but it's a very powerful insight. It's a key insight, and it is the thing that's added, as you said, and different from the West. But I don't want to dwell on that. That's really it. It's I think that, and the one thing I would say, you know, the one thought I've had in terms of examining this idea is, or this concept, is that it could be either the idea, the way this is laid out in the Gita is that I would call it a construct. And that means it could be either an invention or a discovery. And that's maybe a Western way of looking at it. You know, it's art, it's man-made, or it's a recognition of the way things are in nature. But that doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter whether it's an invention or a discovery. We'll never really know, but it works. And that's, I think that's the great thing about it.
Thank you. Thank you, Brian. So I'll say two things, and then we'll go to Joe's question. I do want to answer Joe's questions. So, but I want to hear as many people as possible, any comments, any questions. And if you want to bring up issues of West and East, we can do that, because this is actually a good time to do that. I don't know when we'll get, time to do this. So this is a good time to do it. But try to understand, the thing is that, so first point I want to make is that there are conceptual structures that shape a particular thought. And you cannot take conceptual structures which are outside it and then somehow try to interpret that, because then you're not understanding what is being said. So so you have to realize that if you're using concepts outside, and we can talk about it explicitly. So just be brief in your questions, then hopefully we can get, we can get to it. Okay.
May I say one thing?
Please, yeah.
Another thing, because besides these meetups, I've been doing a lot of reading in what they call existential philosophy, just different philosophers that have that label. What I would like to say is, these people have been struggling, some of them explicitly, with understanding the Indian idea and trying to express it in Western terms. And it is very difficult. It is a very arduous, long-winded process.
Yes, so I think what we are doing is a much better way of doing that, of just immersing ourselves in the Indian thought. So let me address the two things that you said. One is the witness, the concept of witness is crucial. It is basically consciousness, like sthita prajna. Prajna means, sthita means steady. Prajna means awareness, wisdom. So the steady wisdom. So it is all about awareness, that you are actually alive and awake and conscious on a continual basis. You are aware, so that it's really the heart of it is awareness, the witness. That is the concept. The second thing is that Gita certainly holds that it's not a construct, but it is recognition. It starts by saying reality is what it is, and this is what I think reality is. So it is definitely in the tradition of recognition. There is a whole bunch of, you know, a lot of science is like that. You know, people like Newton, Darwin are like that. People, even people like Aristotle have that of saying reality is what it is, and we are the purpose of thinking is to identify it, and that Gita is in that tradition. Okay, let's take more comments and questions. Penny, go ahead.
I had just a quick question, because in reviewing, I came across two terms and I wasn't sure. Purusha, is that center, and like Prakriti, could that be periphery?
Okay, very, very good question. So Purusha is the witness. It is the center, and center and awareness is one and the same thing.
Okay.
So it is that witness at the center. It is witness at the center, is Purusha. And Prakriti is the world. It is the manifestation. The Purusha is the unmanifested. The Prakriti is the manifested. So, and there is this Purusha and Prakriti going back and forth. So it's the world and the spirit going back and forth. Absolutely. Thank you. Folks, just go ahead. This is a good time to talk about Gita. So go ahead and type an exclamation mark. Otherwise, I'm going to keep answering Joe's questions. Joe, go ahead.
This really links actually this whole entire thing to our meetups on language. In a way, the words I'm using in a way are actually bringing into consciousness. No, I'm just saying in general.
Yep.
Thank you for understanding the selfless. Thank you for that. Then in the, as far as, is there room for the word sacrifice then? And is that another word that we should probably not use when
basically
talking about?
All the words that you're using have completely different meanings, and then it is actually much more confusing.
That's what I'm saying. I'm trying to
When
get the
you
language.
use a word which has exactly opposite meanings.
Yeah.
So for example, the word that is used widely, quite often in Gita, is the word yajna. And yajna means, it means sacrifice in a sense, but what it really means, even the word sacrifice, like the way in which Gospel of John deals with it, is very different than the way, you know, people think of it now. Actually, the word of sacrifice that is used in Gospel of John is close to what the word means in Gita, but the word in Gita is yajna. Now yajna, the connotations of that, they're both denotations and connotations are different. So let's just look at the concept. You know, what is being referred to when you say that you are doing yajnas? For example, in this, I don't know which chapter I was reading, but you're talking, there are many kinds of yajna that people can do. People can do yajna of breathing. People can do yajna of action, can do yajna of knowledge. Now, what is it that you're doing? Those are all ways of taking action towards the center by resolutely giving up things which are taking you away from the center. So yajna is simply action directed towards the center. And it does involve giving up things which are moving you towards the periphery. So it's the same thing in Gospel of John. You know, it is all about giving up things which are taking you away from the center and acting towards the center. You are acting. It is not, so it's best way to understand it is just movement towards the center. And in the process, anything that was there in the periphery, like your emotions, to the contrary, your sense of fear, sense of attachment, you're giving that up. You are giving up the actions that you're used to, habits that you're used to. You're giving up thoughts which you were engaged in, but are not taking you towards the center, which are actually contrary, which are distracting you from the center. So you're giving up those things in order to pursue the center. So there is giving up involved, but what you're giving up is for the sake of moving towards the center. So the goal of yajna is movement towards the center, just like goal of sacrifice is eternal life. Eternal life is simply the life according to eternal principles. That is the same concept as center. It's the center. You are being intensely conscious, intensely present, and any emotions that you had to the contrary, any habits that you had to the contrary, you're willing to give up. Any thoughts that you had towards the contrary that were stopping you from being intensely aware now, which is what the center is, which is what the witness is, which is what Purusha is. You are giving that up. It is conceptualized or not conceptualized. The metaphor that is used in India, when you think of yajna, it's actually a fire, and you're throwing things into the fire. So you're saying, I want this intense consciousness, and I'm willing to throw my thoughts in. I'm willing to throw my habits in. I'm willing to throw the things that belong to me into this fire in order to have the fire. So that's what, and the fire is, you know, you're putting ghee in it, you're putting various things in it in order to keep the fire going. And that's exactly what it is. But the purpose is not giving up. The purpose is to be at the center. What do you think?
I think it's fantastic. I mean, in a way, this is the form, I look at this in the sense of grace, almost. I like that word better because you're almost accepting grace. You're integrating knowledge. You are sacrificing something, but it's not real sacrifice. It's not by the terms that we think of anyway.
It is two things. You know, you're getting things from grace, but it is actually closer to asking. This is actually asking, because it is something that you do.
Right.
Yajna is something that you do in order that you say yes to grace. So it is you saying yes to grace. And you're saying that by actually turning your attention to it, and thereby turning your attention away from other things. Right.
And this is what we just talked about last week with chapter 18. Yeah, it's beautifully put. Thank you. Thanks so much, Shrikant.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe.
It was a lot of fun.
Next up is Ella.
I understand it, and so there's no issue there. I've done it and thrown my thoughts in the fire and my prejudgments of possible upcoming problematic situations and conflicts, and it works. It works. It's you get different reactions from people when you're in that space. It changes things in the moment, and you're alive in the moment, and you're communicating differently with them, and they're receiving it differently. The only issue I have is sustaining it, is because I get caught up at times in the the sensations of just reacting and not being able to sustain it. But it's really, really good in that space to be in the moment, and feeling more alive, more connected with other people in the universe, and yeah. But
Excellent. Thank you, Ella. And that is really the core. I mean, what chapter 2 is doing is that it is telling you what the goal is to be the center, to be at the center. And the way in which Naneshwar talks about it is that initially you get a taste of it, in the sense that you come close to it. For a moment, you're there. And then you are not. And then you have to work at it. Now, that entire process of working, what is involved in that? What are the various things, that are moving you in different directions? Like, for example, the detailed discussion of gunas is about that, the tamas and rajas and sattvic. The Gita, one of the things I really like about it is that it does an excellent job of mapping out what is possible to us. That we can operate in tamasic, and we can operate, and we do operate in rajasic, and we do operate in tamasic, and we can and do operate in sattvic. Start of it is to notice what you're doing. It is not easy because it requires effort. It also promotes an approach which is very gentle. It talks about multiple paths that people can take, whether karma yoga is right for you, or bhakti yoga is right for you, or whether jnana yoga is right for you, and how you can use the combinations, and how are they related to each other, and how they take you towards the same thing. So rest of the Gita is about that. The chapter 2 very powerfully sets up the goal, the idea of sthita prajna, and then rest of it is building that up. So thank you for your observations, Ella. Next up is Joe.
No, I think that this just comes back. I was just going to comment really
Joe,
quickly.
let me do one thing. Rupali, I would love to hear you talk about chapter 2 at some point, if you can. Go ahead, Joe.
No, I was just going to say this. One of the things that I think that, coming to Ella's point, is that this was the importance of self-discipline in this, that the desires that we have are, disciplined, but we understand them. And this is the way we actually can. And these are, I find, in a way, yes, it's a hard thing to sustain, but this is where habits come in, and the knowledge of oneself. And then you institute the things that you need to do in order to maintain being able to act from the center. So
Absolutely. So like, and this is very deep. So for example, all yogas have, I mean, the concept here is practice. You know, you have
right.
practice, and you have to, just like for your body, for this spiritual development, you need a practice, and you need to do it on a regular basis. And as you do it, it gets easier and easier. You are there for a longer period of time. And because it is action, it's continuous action. You know, this, we're talking about consciousness. You know, are you conscious? And that isn't a question that we face at every moment. And you know, we have to work at it to be conscious. So thank you. All right, anybody else wants to chime in? Rupali, are you there? Let's see, anybody else wants to add anything? Okay, Joe, you have anything?
I just like the format. I mean, I'm having a good time, but I feel like I'm the only one that's having a good time. Like,
It's not true.
I'm having a great time. I mean,
Well, it is true that you're having a great time, but I think lots of people are enjoying listening
okay,
to this.
it's good.
So, yeah, let's focus on that. Evanik, you had something?
Oh no, I was just gonna say I've just been listening to everybody's comments tonight, and they've been great. I just didn't have anything like to add,
Okay.
so that's why I haven't been speaking. But I mean,
Okay. All right. So Evanik, so we're going to do, we finished only 2 chapters, but that was expected, because I did want Yogeshwar to talk about chapter 2, and I thought that went off really, really well. What we're going to do is, I'm going to aim to finish it in 2 more meetups. So we've got 16 more chapters, so about 8 chapters each. I don't know whether we'll do that. Worst comes to worst, we have got 3 meetups, in which case it'll be about 5 chapters each, and we should be able to do that. And I think the next bunch of chapters may be able to go through a little faster, but I did want to take the time today to make all these points. So thank you so much. And you know, I am so grateful to Yogeshwar, because Rupali was pointing out how amazing the chapter 1 was as compared to our first take on chapter 1. I have not seen chapter 2, and I'm sure the same thing would be true of chapter 2. So Yogeshwar has had, you know, has added so much, and I'm definitely going to miss him and miss these meetups. So, all right, folks, thank you so much. We'll see you soon. See you tomorrow. Tomorrow is going to be chapter 3 to about, I'm hoping, about 3 to 7, 3 to 8, 3 to 9 is what I'm going to aim at. All right, see you. Bye.
thank you, Shrikant.
Bye.